Hey tubers, welcome back for today's adventure, and what we're going to do is drag this 1983 ATC200 into the garage and find out where all its compression went. We tried to start this thing and we just couldn't get it to start. So I want to drag it in and do a few tests on it, and then we're probably going to end up opening it up to figure out why the compression is so low and what it's going to take to fix it. If troubleshooting, when one is troubleshooting low compression, it really doesn't matter if you're working on an all-terrain cycle like this Honda, an all-terrain vehicle, some four-wheeler, a lawnmower, a tractor, any four-stroke. Two-strokes are a little different, so let's just talk about four-strokes for this video. It's always the same, right? You're trying to figure out, do you have leak by the rings? Is your timing correct? Are your valves closing? Are your valves just completely worn out? Do you have a blown head gasket, right? This is basically what you're trying to figure out. And this discussion works for all four-strokes. All four-stroke ATVs, ATCs, tractors, lawnmowers, whatever. And a lot of the, little things like remove the carburetor slide before you could do a compression check and all that other kind of trivia, that all counts too. If one is trying to find out where your compression is, you're obviously trying to look for a leak. And to turn off leaks that are supposed to be there, you want to be at top dead center, and you want to make sure your valves are closed. So just quickly, with the valves being closed, hear how it's loose, and I really went back and loosened up the intake valve again. You're at top dead center. You see the little circle there. It's got to match up with this here, right? And down on the flywheel, right? You got this thing right there, and you're looking for a little T on the flywheel. I think you guys could see it. So now I know I'm at top dead center. I got both my valves closed, and once again I had to loosen up the intake valve some more. And I gotta tell you, the intake valve is like just about completely loose to put some play into it. And if we recall, the air cleaner was missing and dirty on this. So as you inhale dirt, quite honestly, you're basically sandblasting the intake valve. And after a while, you don't have enough intake valve to close. And if you don't close the intake valve, obviously there's a leak. Now what I've done is I have my compressor feeding air into the cylinder, and you got to lock the cylinder in place as I have. That's what that wire there is doing for a living, right? I lock the crank, which locks the cylinder, which keeps me at top dead center, which keeps my valves closed. And as you put air into it, you listen to where the air is coming out. I don't know how much of an air change you can hear, but there appears to be a lot of air coming out from the carburetor. So I'm thinking, given the lousy air cleaner, or missing air cleaner, and the amount of dirt in the intake, in the air box and so forth, my guess is that intake, and once again the adjustment being backed off all the way, I'm thinking that the intake valve is completely a mess. The timing does appear to be correct on this thing. The timing chain is a little, I think you guys could see that, right? It's a little loose there, but it does all seem to be good. I'm going to adjust that while I'm here to make sure it tightens up. And I'm going to put the valve covers back on, put it back together again. Now that I loosened up that intake a little bit more, I'm going to see if perhaps it'll start. I doubt it. I really do doubt it. I think this engine needs to come off, and I think I need to replace that intake valve, or quite honestly, I think I have a spare head floating around, so I'll probably just change that. So I loosened up the intake valve dramatically and put some oil in the cylinder, and we're coming in at about 100 psi. And I don't know what my hang-up is, but I want to hear this engine start before I take it apart, or prove that it just won't start. Normally engines that have intake valve leaks just don't like to start. They kind of belch out the intake as they're supposed to be taking gasoline in, a fuel air mixture, so they don't start. But I think I'm going to give this one another try. One could try all they want. This engine just is not starting with that intake valve leak. Next thing is to take the engine off and, you know, get the shifter loose, take the two bolts out, get this cover off, take this sprocket off of there. Looks like somebody might have had a mouse for dinner. Get that off of there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bolts. Carburetor has to come off. 8, 9. The exhaust 10, 11, and hopefully the engine comes off. The only thing that's occasionally tough on these engines, when you go to take the exhaust off, a lot of times the pipe doesn't slip in the muffler, so you got to take the muffler off. Sometimes the whole thing is kind of wedged in there. Hopefully I'll be able to get the engine out this way, get enough play and get the engine out this way. So next time you should be seeing this thing, hopefully it's all removed. You ever wonder how long it takes to take the motor out of an ATC frame and tear the whole thing apart? I can answer that question now. It takes an hour and 10 minutes, and it would have taken probably 10-15 minutes less if I didn't have trouble separating the muffler from the exhaust manifold. Anyway, we have the engine torn apart here, and it's kind of interesting. I don't know where you really want to start. If we start on the top, right, the cam looks good, right? As I rub my nail across that, right, you don't hear scraping, right? The bearings look good, all that. The whole top end looks good, right? There's no scarring on here, very little wear. So the very tippity top looks very nice. You start looking at the valves, and I really expected this valve and seat to have a lot of erosion, and it doesn't seem to. But if you give it the old, I don't know what you guys want to call this, the wet willy test, let's say, and you spray like starting fluid in here, it does ooze its way out fairly quickly. Oops. So we shot some starting fluid in there, and I'll show you. Right, that it is leaking out of there. You see how it's all wet. So it fails the wet willy test. But the other thing I noticed very quickly, and excuse this whole mess, is that there's like nothing here, right? I mean, it's like there's no resistance. Then if you give it the old fingernail test, listen. So I think this engine seized up and they loosened it or something like that. So believe it or not, this engine might actually could actually get by as a no replacement parts repair. And by that I mean I could pull this off, hone the bore, which would probably bring that back. I could probably free up the rings and bring that back, and I could probably lap the valves and bring that back. But what am I going to do? I am going to hone this, and I think I'm going to change the rings. I'm going to clean it up, though that area in there, I mean, you know, looks like a rodent's been nesting in there for a while. Though I'm probably going to use the piston and bore again. I did order a new set of rings, about 30 bucks. So I'm going to smash those in there. So we'll get new rings. I did tighten the timing chain before I took it all apart. Easy enough to do. You take that rubber cap off. You take the top bolt out. It's 10 millimeters, though that's not doing a lot of anything. Then you loosen the bottom one. It's 12 or 14. And you'll actually see this tighten up. And then you tighten it up again. When you loosen it, what it does is it releases a ratchet to allow things to tighten. So the chain does seem to be good. Once again, the top end, the cam, all that seems to be good. The very top of the head seems to be good. So I think it's just a matter of tearing this apart and doing a major clean out. I do have to go through the hoard, because I think I bought one of these literally in pieces in a box, and I'd like to take a look at that to see what's in that box, to see if there's anything that I want to put on here. While I was messing with the whole thing, I did pop it into gear. It did seem to go into gear, and you know, then you try to roll it and it fights you. So I think the transmission is good. Nothing would be worse than to put this whole thing together and discover that, you know, the tranny's blown. I mean, I guess you just tear the head off of something else and put it on here. So anyway, I am going to end this video now. If I were to say what this died of, to be honest, I don't know. What do you guys think? It's so dirty in here. I mean, it was, though those deposits don't seem hard. It doesn't seem loose in the bore. It seems that the rings are seized. So I don't know if they ran it low on oil and overheated it that way. I mean, it is. The chains always make it a little harder to tell. Give it a quick blast of solvent. Put the flashlight to it so you guys... I mean, to me it looks rusty. I don't know. See what you guys think. To me it looks rusty. Right. But it doesn't look that worn in the bore. Too bad old Harvey doesn't have 3 hands. I don't know. For whatever reason, I think the rings seized, and that caused me a bunch of my trouble. Yeah, they don't, or maybe the rings are completely worn. But you know, the piston doesn't look loose. The piston doesn't look loose in the bore. You know what I mean? I'm not able to move it side to side or up or down. So anyway, it appears the rings quit somehow, whether they're seized or they buffed them off. But I'm going to start there. And let me go see what spare parts I have. And I think I'm going to end this video here. I try to keep my video somewhere around 10 minutes long, 10 to 15. Some of the longer ones, I noticed that people don't make it to the end. And then if I say something important at the end, you all don't hear. Then I start the next video and I get questions like what happened. And it kind of, the video ends and the new one starts. So yeah, let's wrap this up here. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for dropping by to watch and comment and subscribe. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I always enjoy the comments. Please remember, feet down, heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.